If you've seen the 2004 comedy Mean Girls, you might recall a scene where Regina George's mother insists that she's a cool mom, not a regular mom. The cool mom is a popular trope used in TV and movies, and Lorelai Gilmore is perhaps one of the most iconic cool moms in TV history. However, Lorelai's presence is more than a coffee and pizza-loving inn owner. She's a traumatized, guarded, and lost individual. If you haven't seen the show Gilmore Girls before, Lorelai is one of the main characters. She plays the mother of Rory, who she gave birth to at 16, and she comes from a very rich, privileged background but was estranged from her parents after giving birth to Rory and has since lived in the small town of Stars Hollow as a single, most of the time, mother working at a small inn. Lorelai is just about as random and spunky as a person can get, and this is where she gets her cool mom essence. She doesn't really believe in healthy eating, her pop culture references are like no other, and her wit is incredible. She's fun to be around and people like her. More than that though, she is an extremely loving mom. Her entire heart is devoted to Rory, and we learn early on in the series that she sacrificed, and she continues to sacrifice, a lot in order to help Rory be successful and create and achieve goals of her own. If you're watching Gilmore Girls to pass the time, it is very easy to accept Lorelai as the fun, cool mom character that is carefree and just there to have a good time. And I've seen many people characterize Lorelai as just that. On my recent video about Rory's downfall though, a lot of comments mention that Lorelai babied Rory a lot of the time, didn't criticize her, give her consequences when she misbehaved, and that she was too busy trying to be 16 again herself. But really, I think Lorelai is one of the most deeply flawed and raw characters out there, and despite that, she was still actually a really good mother to Rory. Lorelai had a troubled childhood. Considering her quirky attitude and independent personality, she never really fit in with the classy and proper, for lack of nicer words, lifestyle her parents led. In the show, Lorelai even says to her mother during a fight that while living with them, she felt strangled due to her lack of being able to be who she really is when she lived with them as a child. Because of that feeling, she ran away shortly after giving birth to Rory. This obviously hurt her parents and created a rift in her relationship with them that still wasn't mended by the time we meet Lorelai in season 1 when she's in her early 30s. Although we as viewers don't really see much of what actually went on during her childhood, we see its effects. From the beginning of the show to the end, and even in the reunion, Lorelai has constant struggles and conflicts with herself and others that are obviously a result of trauma she has from her childhood and teen years during her pregnancy with Rory. Lorelai hides, bottles up, and refuses to confront her emotions. Considering how her mother Emily acts towards her during Friday night dinners, this trait of Lorelai's is most likely the result of her lacking the ability to be open about her emotions as a child. When Lorelai begins to attend Friday night dinners with her parents Emily and Richard in order to be able to pay for Rory's Chilton tuition, they treat her as if she's still a teenager. They often belittle her personal interests and work, most likely because of their own denial and hatred towards Lorelai being unhappy enough to leave when she was younger and actually being able to start a successful life of her own, and they rarely give her the opportunity to be completely open with them about her feelings. So Lorelai is also stuck in this 16-year-old. She carries that mindset into her other relationships, thus explaining why she hasn't been able to move on from that immature, childlike state of mind that she had when she left them all those years ago. Since most of the people she interacts with do not share the same trauma as her, Lorelai's issues usually end up being what breaks the relationship up or creates conflict. When she's confronted by conflict with a partner or friend which can arise emotions that she doesn't want, she abandons it out of fear of consequence. She does the same thing with her parents. When she tries to be open with them and they refuse, she stops and continues this mental struggle in defining her relationship with them and whether she should love them, hate them, or miss them, considering they still treat her like a child even though she's proved that she's a successful adult. In her relationships with other people, Lorelai is usually able to recognize that she's the one who's making mistakes. However, she does always seem to struggle to define her actions, and I believe it's because she herself hasn't realized the trauma she has from her childhood, because often she still questions what other people have done wrong in their relationship as well, even though it may seem obvious to us that it was entirely her fault. So, if Lorelai is stuck in this weird limbo of behaving like an adult but also still sort of possessing the emotional maturity of a 16-year-old, it kind of explains why she does also at times act like a teenager. At 16, you haven't lived yet, but for Lorelai, she had a literal child on her own at 16, and so she never really got the chance to live because she had to work so hard in order to give Rory and her both a life. I've seen a lot of people make the argument that Lorelai is too childish, but I disagree on that point. The only areas where I do think Lorelai is childish Childish is in her relationships, but as I mentioned earlier, I think that's a result of trauma, and also the fact that Rory's father, Christopher, wasn't ever present during Rory's childhood, so she just has a lot of rocky history in the relationship department. And she sometimes is a little bit childish in her communication. She lacks basic communication skills. That goes hand in hand with her lack of skills when it comes to relationships, so she needs some work there. Lorelai just fears being abandoned again, and because of that and her trauma, she just isn't the best with relationships and has trouble committing herself, and doesn't realize that she herself has a bad habit of leaving people for no reason. Lorelai behaving like a teen sometimes also explains some of her other flaws, like being a little bit self-centered and a tad bit entitled. Not only is that typical teenager attitude, but it's also a reflection of her parents. Lorelai, however much she fights it, is a lot like her mother, and it's typical of immature minds to neglect the fact that you're often very much like your parents. Lorelai's personality is bubbly and fun. Her playful language with others and enjoying being silly and goofy, I just think that's how she lives life. To me, there's no proof that being quote-unquote childish and immature has done anything to stop her from succeeding. In the show, we see her living in a pretty big house, I might add, on her own with Rory, working as a manager at an inn before actually purchasing and running her own inn with her best friend. She graduates from business school and at the same time manages to be involved in literally everything Rory and her community are doing. She's an incredibly hard worker, and I think she sets a great example of balancing fun and work for Rory. I mentioned earlier that I've seen a few people argue that Lorelai played a big part in Rory's downfall. While I do think Lorelai sometimes encouraged Rory to do the wrong things out of her own hatred towards the life Rory was beginning to live, and Lorelai did throw some big fits over small conflicts, which didn't set a good example, and Emily did it too. I think that Lorelai was generally a pretty great mother. First off, she encouraged Rory to chase her dreams. That was all she ever wanted for Rory, to go to her dream school, get her dream job, and live her dream life. In doing that, Lorelai also encouraged Rory to recognize that she needed to live at the same time and not let her work and study dictate and control her life. She let Rory's friends band practice in their garage when they had no other place. She let Rory go to parties, and the biggest thing is that she trusted Rory. Maybe she put too much faith in Rory, I don't know, but I don't think anything Lorelai did as a mother in terms of letting her have fun and gain some life experiences early on was particularly bad, especially when you consider that Rory kept a lot from Lorelai. So if anything shady was going on, Lorelai probably didn't know about it. And when Rory did make mistakes, Lorelai was usually the only one to really punish her. When Rory accidentally fell asleep with Dean after the dance in Patty's dance studio, Lorelai was furious with Rory. When Rory decided that she was dropping out of Yale, Lorelai was in disbelief and declared that she couldn't support Rory making a decision like this. So Rory ran off to live with her grandparents because they never really punished her other than simply scolding her, I guess. And although Lorelai thought Rory was supposed to be perfect like everyone else in Stars Hollow did, Lorelai also knew Rory's flaws and did everything she could to help her let go of them. Do I think that sometimes Lorelai let Rory off a little too easily? Sure. But remember that Lorelai grew up in a household where she was constantly told no and was probably punished for the smallest things, so you can't really blame her for trying to be as supportive of Rory as possible. Well, there's my little take on Lorelai. I could honestly say a lot more about her, and I don't want to act like she doesn't have flaws and, she's not a perfect person, but today I just wanted to focus more on her as a mother and role model to Rory and how she's more than just this fun, carefree, cool mom person. And, she had a lot of struggles of her own, and despite all of those, I think she was a good mom. So if you guys want to see more Gilmore Girls related videos, let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so that you guys are notified when I upload every single Saturday. See you in the next one. Bye!